Given the state of our media today, how does the movement get the proper coverage needed to draw and attract attention to it? I'm going to say something sacrilegious here because I'm in my friend Robert Greenwald's studios. I think too many movement organizations spend all their time trying to issue press releases and announce things. News arises when people are on the move and they're doing things. Having said that, it means that our independent media, including Brave New Films, is more important than any other media that we really have access to. And having said that, I don't think there's anything wrong with continually peppering the mainstream media with letters to the editor, and where we have scholars and journalists who are sympathetic to our views, they should be trying to write op-ed pieces. And where we have investigative reporters, like the Rolling Stone reporters recently, who can uncover scandals in the Pentagon, scandalous statements by McChrystal, making heads roll, more power to them. The very idea that the Pentagon's relationship to the media is a psychological warfare operation caused one Pentagon person to quit and blow the whistle, and that too went to Rolling Stone. So I do think we have ways to get the coverage modified, and if we can't, we still can communicate with each other and millions of people around the world online. Hollywood can play a big role in movements. Why aren't they stepping up against these wars? What type of impact could they have? Where is Jane Fonda? I'm not the one to ask. Where is Sean Penn? There seems to be an occasional person in Hollywood who steps up, but basically there's something about these wars in particular that troubles Hollywood and leads people like George Clooney to be kind of stranded in an innocuous filmmaking. I don't know what it is. It will be regretted. On the other hand, those who are trying to turn Hollywood into a big machine against the Muslim world, they're not doing well at all either. So I think we're going to have to assume that Hollywood will catch up, perhaps, but it's not going to lead the battle to end Afghanistan. Lady Gaga, there you go. She's our leader. Lady Gaga is severing ties with Target over LGBT rights. I didn't know that she had ties with Target, but good for her. What corporations should we boycott over the long wars? This is a need of our movement. I've mentioned this several times. I don't think we have corporate focus enough, but if you look at the Rand Corporation's contracts on the drones, if you look at, I believe it's General Atomic Corporation in San Diego, go to your website and you'll find some corporate connections to the research, development, and use of the drones. The UN reports Afghan casualties hit a record high of 2,777 in 2010, an increase of 15%. One civilian death is too many. Can we trust those numbers? We cannot trust those numbers. We need an independent oversight of the numbers. The United Nations is part of the NATO coalition. They have already admitted in their own reports that they probably undercount the numbers. We need to get those researchers from Johns Hopkins and elsewhere who turned out those reports during Iraq, and we will find, I'm sad to say, many thousands more Afghans have been killed on all sides since we have been there. And all that's necessary is for the Congress somehow, or the President, to direct an independent accounting independent of the United Nations and the Pentagon, and you'll see the numbers are much worse. Do you think we can just leave Afghanistan as it currently is? No, we could stay and make it worse. How can we leave when their leaders are almost all corrupt? Does that mean we should stay while their corruption deepens? And the Taliban are still active in some parts of the country. Well, the Taliban, unlike the Americans, are from Afghanistan. I met an Afghan filmmaker this week who actually believed that the Taliban are from Pakistan and not from Afghanistan. That's how bad some of the thinking is. But the point is, we have driven al-Qaeda out of Afghanistan into sanctuaries in Pakistan, sanctuaries in Yemen, sanctuaries in North Africa, sanctuaries in London. Is there anyone capable of recognizing this policy is bringing about conditions that make us more and more unsafe in addition to economically broke? If anybody wants a book on negotiating our way out of this, there are plenty of them. Scott Atran, A-T-R-A-N, Talking with the Enemy, is somebody that spent years in this area. Some of the reports by the Center for American Progress, the New America Foundation, the Afghan Study Group go into great detail because it is a legitimate question, how do we leave? Of course it is. And there are answers, but nobody I know is listening, very few in Congress. Thanks for bringing up Peter King's assault on our American Muslim community. Is this not a modern day form of McCarthyism? Yes, absolutely. Peter King should know better, but he seems intoxicated with the Tea Party moment, and maybe he's exceptionally emotional because of what's happened in New York. Maybe it's not pandering, maybe he's serious, but he certainly is the spear carrier for the neocon and conservative combined assaults to expand the Patriot Act. And I think he's playing on some legitimate fears by some Americans, and others have to step up and repudiate the idea that blanket categorization of whole communities is not the way to go, and is likely to bring about results that you don't want. But all wars, all conflicts need a scapegoat. And so we need to always remember a moral obligation as well as a political one to stand with scapegoats, to stand with those who are scapegoated. In my early days, it was Southern black people on the plantations. Now it's Muslim Americans. What hold does the military and Machiavellians have over Obama that he's willing to commit more forces to expanding aggression abroad? What can we do to reel him back in? Well, it's not a fishing expedition here, it's a peace movement. I think you have to, he needs to think like us, in a sense, and we need to think like him to figure out what's possible. As president, he wakes up with somebody in a suit telling him how many terrorist threats there are, and then he meets a pollster to tell him what would happen to his standing if we got attacked again like New York. And then, then he goes and works out in the gym and tries to deal with the situation. In other words, he is driven as president with a focus that the rest of us don't have to have. And that is, he knows that he has a constitutional obligation and he's politically required to defend the country against schemes and plots that might bring harm to Americans. So when he decides to take a step towards peace, he knows he will be attacked as going soft. So I think what we need to do is take very seriously the war on terrorism, detect very carefully what's real and unreal about it, and argue that the war on terrorism policy has created more terrorism, not less. That's an argument, in addition to the economic argument. And we have to frame our peace movement message as based on a message that we are concerned about the safety of Americans as well, and we think that these policies that we propose will lessen the inflammation of Muslim hatred towards the United States, and therefore lessen the basis of possible violence. We have to create a climate sufficient to make it possible for him to do what he may well think is the right thing to do, but is politically dangerous, which is get those troops out of Iraq and out of Afghanistan and get that money back here invested in American jobs and health care and infrastructure. Can I elaborate on the connection between the war on terror and the war on drugs? A very good comment. I would only make this quick response that the structure of the argument is the same and it overlaps. That is, we have been engaged in a multi-decade war that really kicked in its most recent phase under President Nixon, a war against drugs. And drug traffickers for a time became conflated with terrorists before 9/11, and narco-terrorism was a temporary substitute until we got Islamic terrorism as the focal point of the framework. And like the war on terror, the war on drugs can't be resolved by military means, but how would you like to be a politician calling for the end of the war on drugs? Then all the middle-class voters would, and many black voters and Latino voters would be, parents would be screaming at you. So I think the main argument is the multi-billion-dollar cost of the war on drugs, the failure to produce results, the growing danger of a war on our California, Arizona, Mexican border, the thousands and thousands of people who've been killed since the president of Mexico was encouraged to take up a George Bush-style war on drugs in 2006. The call by many in the foreign policy establishment to go into Mexico and defeat the drug rings there like they say we did in Colombia, which is simply not true. So it's a question of the economic argument and the argument that it's failed and that it does deep damage that I think will eventually win this debate.